Welcome to Construction Genius. This is Eric Anderton, and my guest this week is Ryan Ware, the VP of Construction and co-founder of Vantest, a general contractor and specialty subcontractor out of the Bay Area in California. As part of their design-build approach, Vantest integrates high-tech construction design and planning, off-site fabrication, and multi-trade subcontractors to deliver custom interior spaces. Ryan has a background in architecture. He's moved into more of the construction side of the business, and he understands the challenges of implementing practices that differ from that of conventional methods. And he really believes that the construction industry has stayed within its comfort zone for too long. In our interview, we discuss why the construction industry is stuck in a comfort zone, how Vantest and other companies are seeking to shift conventional thinking, and what GCs and subs can do to begin to learn about and utilize a new approach to construction that can produce high quality, on schedule, safe projects. The interview is wide-ranging. I think you'll find some of Ryan's perspectives potentially controversial or provocative, but I think you'll find it extremely interesting and helpful to you in your business. Please give us a review of the podcast and a rating wherever you get your podcasts, particularly on Apple or Google. And if you have any feedback or questions, contact me through my website, ericanderton.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn. I really appreciate you listening to the podcast, sharing it with other construction professionals, and enjoy my interview today with Ryan. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Welcome to Construction Genius. This is Eric Anderton, and it's my pleasure to welcome to the show Ryan Ware, the VP of Construction and co-founder of Vantest. Ryan, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
You know, it's interesting. You were starting your career as an architect, went to school for architecture, is that correct?
Correct.
And then a few years ago, you began to make a transition into more of the construction space from the architecture space. I know obviously they work together closely in many situations. What made you begin to make that transition?
It really started on early in my career, watching really how architectural profession was shifting. The construction industry was starting to shift what I'll call forward into the realm of architecture. Watching the delivery models change from a design build or design bid build world to a design build IPD, more of a collaborative approach. And it became kind of apparent to me that in order to really change an industry and work towards changing an industry, it may not be something I want to focus on in the architecture. I wanted to become this bridge between the construction industry and the architectural industry, and that really focusing on the pre-construction planning from a contractor standpoint and understanding the challenges that architects have, but also as a contractor, the challenges we have to bridge that gap between the two parties.
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you real quick. You talk about the gap between the architects and the construction side of a project. How would you describe that gap?
Well, for architects, we always go back to the drawing board. It tends to be our comfort zone. So when we go to solve the problem, we go back to the drawing board to fix it and to think through it, when in reality, the building is sitting there for a contractor. It's real, it's true, the building is on site. And the problem is we're trying to build the building before we build the building. As Revit came into play, and we think about three-dimensional and the coordination and design build and all the specialty subs coming up, it's lost in translation between what our intent is as architects and what we want to see built versus what the field is capable of building, manufacturers capable of manufacturing, and getting that intent to really come to fruition for our clients. And that goes from not only the drawing board, but it's through the budgeting as well. So this, how do we bridge a gap between, cost analysis and bringing true value to our clients?
When you were an architect, what was your biggest challenge working with the GCs and the subs? What was the wall that you kept hitting your head up against?
They weren't in the office with me listening to the clients about what their needs were. That they were, I could have pre-construction project managers and other people maybe coming in, but I didn't have the site superintendents weren't sitting there. Those that are actually, putting studs up, putting drywall and doing the painting, they don't have the emotion of what you get to, from a client standpoint of what they're trying to deliver to their clients, which is their employees or to the patients or to whatever building you're constructing.
So that's interesting what you said there.
Reality.
It's interesting because you talked there about an emotional disconnection between what the client wants and what the contractor is either understanding or capable of doing. And you felt frustrated trying to bridge that emotional connection or communicate that?
Yeah, I think it's like the game of telephone. We can tell a story and we take the information and we begin to put it in a drawing set, but in the end, we take that set, we pass it out to the general contractor who then takes it and explodes it to all of the sub trades, I'll call it, that then kind of digest it and figure out what it is they're supposed to build, who then pass it down to another layer. And, that's just how we've been doing it. But by the time you get to the folks in the field that are actually putting it together, they're so far removed from any of the meetings that we sat in that the buy-in for why we wanted a detail to be a certain way or how that drawing is portrayed or read is different than what we actually thought it was supposed to be. And, it's more, the art of architecture is why I got in it. The science is why I get into the construction world. But we just really lost a connection point there. And it has, now that we're seeing the design build collaborative nature, we still get a little more, but, of kind of getting the GCs on board, the sub-trades on board. Maybe they're in meetings with the clientele, but we still take the drawing set and we still have to distribute it to people who aren't sitting at the table.
So then,
and don't have that emotion that we're really trying to deliver for the client, which means it's a space that not only functions for them, but looks great. We didn't value engineer out the things that everyone touches and feels and sees every day.
So that frustration was building as you were involved as an architect. What made you, when you made that shift to construction, the construction side of the industry, what role did you enter into? How did you go about that shift?
I shifted. I'll go back another 20 years. I had started in really precast before I even became an architect. I did some drafting. I was in drafting school and I went to a small precast plant and started doing some detailing and kind of seeing the yard and watching this entire building being constructed in a factory. I was amazed at watching this occur. And at the time, this is in the mid 90s, we didn't have technology. Everything was hand drafting and CAD was really coming into play.
Right.
But I remember how I felt in the precast world and kind of this prefabrication side. I wrote a paper when I was in school on offsite construction. I started practicing with some precast and offsite construction as an architect back in Ohio. And what I started seeing is this opportunity to work with a manufacturer and really be a specialty subcontractor that could deliver interior construction in a whole new way. And just be, I started recognizing maybe that industry didn't actually know what they were to the architectural and the construction industry.
Can I ask you a quick question? Let me just ask you a question. Yeah. What do you mean specifically by interior construction, just so the audience is tracking with you here?
It has a lot to do with, how we do the wall assemblies. We build a lot of spaces today with metal studs and drywall.
Mm-hmm.
And, to be honest, metal studs and drywall is a technology that's been around for over 100 years.
Right.
It took our industry 40 years to actually adopt it.
Uh-huh.
But what we try to do is build, the assemblies and the doors and the hardware, casework and the power and the networking and other components that are within that space, utilizing prefabrication. And that's what I mean. I mean, it's replacing old technology, if you will, of construction with really new methodology. But not so new that it hasn't been adopted by the industry. It's just something new for the interior construction.
So one of your goals, I know, is that you're focusing on shifting conventional mindsets in the construction industry, and you even stated to move people out of their comfort zone. What do you mean by that conventional mindset? Describe for us that comfort zone that you feel the construction industry is in and needs to move away from?
Well, I'll kind of dive into that by telling a little story that I believe I'm a guy that is forward thinking, and I've always thought that I want to be, changing an industry. And then I go to my personal world, and my son was in school, and he was bringing home his math homework, and math was my, I'm an architect, I'm a contractor. Math is something I'm passionate about. I like economics, and I thought I was really good at it, and I could pass classes. And then he brings his math home, and I stared at it. And after a few hours, I said, "Why are you learning this way? Why are you? I don't understand, any of this. I can't teach you this. I'm trying to scratch my head, banging my head on the wall." And I told him, "Why can't you just learn the way I learned?" And then I stopped and kind of looked at his eyes, and I said, "Look, son, I'm sorry. That's the wrong way to look at that. That is a conventional way to look at it.
Right.
The problems that you are going to face are far different than the problems that I face and that what my parents faced and my grandparents. But I was taught exactly the same way they were taught. And we're in a new world. And that means my conventional mindset on math is that I may not understand what it is you're being taught, but you're going to get to the answer in a different way than I am. It'll give you a whole new analytical way of solving things that maybe my generation and the previous generations just can't see." Mm-hmm. And we need that. We need that to advance. So when I say, conventional mindset, it's we look at our problems in construction and we tend to just try to solve them ourselves. One, we don't ask for help. I mean, I'm as stubborn as anyone. I don't want you in my territory helping me. But in reality, we solve them with exactly the same technology in most cases, with the same material, with the same process that we would if we didn't change in the first place. And it may address an issue now, but it's not something that actually allows us to address it long term. And we do that with we just do it with a lot of things in construction.
Can you give me, can you give me a specific example of the difference between the old math, so to speak, and the new math as it relates to the construction industry?
Yeah, I think it comes down to we know it's broken. We know we have an issue with getting buildings done fast enough. There's not enough labor. It's how do we go about doing this? And for me, in simple forms, what we've done to the industry is speed up the planning process so much to a point to allow the building process to sort of drag on, if you will, and still use the same methodologies to construct the space, rather than slowing down and saying, what if we build it in a different way? What if we did look at offsite construction solutions and prefabrication and got really these specialty subtrades to look at this space? And we took a little more time to plan it out, and then we built it faster because we used a design, manufacture, build approach to it. And we utilized manufacturers' expertise. This is where we become open to outside influencers, is what I call them.
Yep.
to come into the construction industry. And we have to be a little humble in the fact that we are asking for help.
So let me just interrupt you there again. So what you're advocating then is a design, manufacture, build process. And from what you're telling, what it sounds like, and just feed this back to me, is that you're asking contractors, hey, listen, let's not just rush out there and start throwing stuff up and, messing stuff up and building this long punch list that you're going to have to come back to afterwards. Let's just back it off a little bit. Think about how we might be able to do some pre-work before we even get on site, so that when we do get on site, the work goes forward quickly and with the quality that you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. It has, if we look at lean principles, if you just take the theory of slowing down and speed up, we've become a world where we go really fast through design. And the way we solve a TI, for example, is, and it's a broken system all the way through, even jurisdictionally. The space, we kind of get into the space deal late, but we have to go really fast. So we kick out a set of permit drawings to get it into the city. And then we continue to design. And then we release a package for pricing. And then we start buying out packages, but we're still designing.
But just what's interesting to me though, I totally hear you, but I'm hearing guys in my ear right now saying, okay, all right, I get it. But my client comes to me, they want something built. My first instinct is to say yes, and we'll figure it out later. And business is booming. I got to make hay while the sun's shining. How do you address that kind of sort of response or feedback that you might get from folks?
Yeah, obviously we want to address the client, but this is where the shift begins.
There you go.
We're not going to improve if we don't take the moments to address it with our clients. What's the difference in telling a client, like, absolutely, we want to get this project done for you, but we believe you're an innovative client that maybe will look at things slightly different. If you want the space done on time and you want quality, we may want to introduce a whole new methodology of constructing this, which means we're going to shift the model of delivering this a little bit. And, bear with us that, we're still all kind of learning in it. But we do believe in the end, you will get a better space out of it.
So that's interesting right there, because what I'm hearing is that perhaps it's not so much of a contractor issue as it is a client issue. And there's a need perhaps not only to educate the contractors as to what can be done and persuade them, but then also to find the clients who are the ones, taking the money out of their pockets, and and persuade them and educate them.
Yeah, it's actually to educate the entire market. You're educating the brokers who are trying to get a client into a space.
Yep.
You're educating the contractors. You're educating the subtrades. Because I think the excuse always is we're running really fast, right? And I always have this where if we, clients rely on us to be educated and be looking ahead and trying to solve the problem for them. But we this is the comfort zone, right? This is the, hey, I know I'm not comfortable in construction, but at the same time, I'm less comfortable taking on something that I've never done or seen before.
Right.
And the reluctance, right? It's this reality that we will go do something even if we know it's not right, that because we don't want to take on something that we feel like will create us more pain or could create more pain.
Yeah.
It's
the fear of the unknown, risk. Perhaps.
Yeah, it's the fear of the unknown, right? So the perceived risk, which in reality it's not even a risk. It's you're shifting where and how you're doing things.
Yep.
But I would almost say, like, sometimes it's like going to the chiropractor. If you tense up, it's gonna hurt and it's not gonna work.
Yeah, right.
But we go to the chiropractor to do these adjustments and make sure that we continually are working on ourselves. This construction industry, we've had a lot of changes in 25 years, and sometimes it's overbearing. We know we're slow to adapt. We don't have a lot of research and development money. So we tend to push off those that want to enter into our arena and try to help us, and we see them as a threat opposed to someone that can help us.
So let me ask you that, just that point there of research and development, because, if I'm a smaller GC, let's say, and, I'm doing under 100 million, let's say, and maybe I'm making, 3 to 5% at the end of the day. And you say research and development, and I say, what about my retirement?
Yeah. And that's what I think is within the construction industry. One of the biggest challenges is we don't have the money to do the research and development. However, manufacturers, fabricators, they do. And if we would embrace them, if we would not see them as a threat, and the reality of the threat is that someone's going to come in and do it, and they're going to beat us all to the end game, and we're going to miss it. And then that's everybody sort of involved, because we're not working collaboratively to solve it.
Right.
Because we tend to just say, like, hey, we got this. Like, we know there's a problem, but you know what? I can't slow down to try new things. I feel bad for the architecture industry or anybody in construction where they're like, I don't have time to learn anything new. And I'm like, that is a shame that we have put ourselves into this position that we can't learn new things. But if we were to embrace some of these outside influencers, and I have like a connection that I like to make, and that's sort of this theory of Alexander Graham Bell and Steve Jobs in a conference room together. And if Graham Bell pushed Steve Jobs out of the conference room and said, I don't need you in my industry, and Steve Jobs was sitting there throwing the phone on the table and saying, hey, I have an idea for you. I have a lot of R&D money to improve upon your phones. And Graham Bell doesn't have that. And Steve Jobs just can't explain why this phone is a benefit to him, which is part of the issue that we have with the fabrication world to the GC world. Then Graham Bell can push him away and say, I don't need your help. And then what happens if Steve Jobs never is able to develop the iPhone?
Right.
And for me, if the iPhone is not developed, then maybe Uber doesn't exist, and what other companies don't exist. Right. But this ability of releasing one thing gets developed in the technology world of someone who unexpectedly entered another world and kind of supported and changed the phone industry changed drastically after that. But if Steve Jobs would have said, this is a small form factor computer that you can make phone calls on, it's a different story than Steve Jobs saying to all of us, this is an iPhone.
So let me ask you this then. So let me ask you this. And this may be a very difficult question to answer, but as we're talking around this topic of improving productivity, of persuading people in terms of the benefits of offsite manufacturing as it relates to building projects efficiently, what is that iPhone, so to speak, for the construction industry? How would you describe the iPhone?
It's utilizing this, again, the design, manufacture, build approach, where specialty subcontractors can put the interior built environment inside a technology that feeds CNC machines that puts the assemblies together and speeds up. It actually optimizes the skilled trade laborers on site. That's one area. Or building hotels and multifamily utilizing offsite modular volumetric solutions. Right. And utilizing, AI and the artificial intelligence side to kind of track safety, track things inside the factories, but using robotics. We don't have the trades. We all agree to that. But if I can optimize the trades that I do, we can begin to, make safer, construction is a tremendous safety hazard. And it's one of the worst, we have a lot of deaths, and that is a tragedy. Yes. We have a lot of safety issues that happen and injuries on job sites. And we need to find ways to build in a different way with different materials, not just take the same materials and call it offsite, go frame a wall offsite with metal studs and drywall and bring it to a job site. That's that is one of those conventional mindset. It's great. I love that we're studying and we're looking at doing things offsite, getting it to a building, but we're still not using technology to integrate it in at the planning stage, get the data, get the information from the sub-trades, send it through to the factories, deliver it to the job sites, and have the construction team install everything, connect it, get it all put together in a much quicker and much safer, much cleaner, space than they would with conventional materials.
So it's interesting because you bring up sort of the third leg of the stool, where you've got quality, you've got speed, and then you've got safety. And those are obviously three things that plague the construction industry, as you mentioned, and three things that people spend millions, if not billions of dollars every year from different perspectives trying to figure out in different conventional ways. And yet what you're saying is that if we spend more time on this design, manufacture, build process, that is a sort of the killer app for dealing with those three issues.
Yeah, I think it starts to unleash, new opportunities for development.
Yeah.
Right. I think the iPhone was it's the iPhone.
Yeah.
The iPhone isn't the iPhone with all of the apps, all of the games, all of the connection points we now have. It's literally a phone that we can surf the web on.
Right.
But the development of everything else occurred because of the iPhone. So I look at this and say, if we start to embrace, and to be honest, I've said it before, the manufacturing world did a really poor job at explaining to the construction industry. And it's sort of the theory of getting the engineers out of the drawings and down to the manufacturer floor to solve the problem. We need the manufacturers to come in with the contractors and us as contractors and designers to work together to say, like, this is how we can deliver in these design, manufacture, build. And once we get going, who knows what else gets released to solve some other problems that we have in the industry. And to me, it's just, we need, you got to have that one moment where you start to break loose. And the more projects, and this is not new. I mean, we've been doing offsite construction for thousands of years. I mean,
right.
We know the buildings that were built with it, but the interior construction is a little different. We've been far slower to embrace it. And it has two areas and two reasons for that. One, you're not understanding each other, not talking the same language. Two, really the value proposition of the manufacturing world was not in line with anything the construction industry. And three, it just was this, I'm not ready to adopt you yet. We weren't at that tipping point.
Right.
And we all know we're there, and it's just a matter of embracing that we're not in competition, that we're really, these specialty subs that can do a lot of things through manufacturing. We want to help, and we want to be able to construct spaces in a much different way that delivers far more for clients. But at the same time, it's really about changing the industry to be better for the future for our children. It goes back to my son. I need you to learn the way you need to learn, because your problems are going to be different than mine. And if we don't change it, we're not setting up success for anybody in the future either.
So then let me ask you that. There's a couple of things you brought up here. So let's say I'm a GC. I understand that this change has to happen. And, I know some GCs, they're, these are very large ones that you would know. They're almost standing on the sideline, letting some of the folks who are doing this stuff be the Palm Pilot, so that the Palm Pilot folks learn and they can swoop in and do more of the iPhone. You know what I'm saying? But
yeah, absolutely. I had a Palm Pilot, so I know.
Yeah. So what I'm curious though is if I want to begin to make progress as a GC, it sounds like one of the ways that I could do that is by doing a little bit of outside the box thinking in terms of who I'm hiring into my organization. Maybe some young blood or some fresh blood that isn't necessarily got the construction management background, but what type of background might I be looking for in order to bring in some fresh ideas that could be cultivated over a period of time?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. The new generation, they're learning in a different way, right? So they've been in this gaming industry, and in actuality, our software that we use is coming from the gaming industry.
Interesting.
And it feels like a video game when you're flying around in it.
And what do you use that software for in the Vantest software? What are you guys using that for?
Well, we're tied to a manufacturer, so we use it. The manufacturer that we utilize, we procure the software through them. It is a three-dimensional software that prices it, engineers everything that's to be fabricated, and it tells us warnings when something can't be fabricated or that something inside the wall assembly is clashing with something else. It does a lot of, you can think about it almost like it's AI in a way of kind of helping us engineer these assemblies, but that information gets sent to the factory floor. And, that actually started through the game Doom back in that was back in the 90s. I remember it in architecture school when it was out, and it's based on the Java platform. It was out before Revit was out. And to me, it's starting to advance. Look at each of these technologies, right? I mean, it's sort of looking at the industry from a different vantage point,
right?
And this goes back to the area of sometimes we're in our own way and we're too close to a problem that
right.
we can't solve it.
Right.
And when you go to the QC, QA area, you do your own, but you usually have another set of eyes look at it.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you're looking at trying to solve a problem, sometimes having people that aren't in your industry or haven't been really trained in that area give you a perspective that you've never thought about. And I think a lot of times I was just with a gentleman yesterday who said his father was a GC, and he goes, he would never, ever build this way, what you're talking about. But like, I'm looking at it like, we got to do something different. Generational things, like we just got stuck in that comfort zone. We don't see it. And we have to step back and we have to look at it. Again, it's a humbling feeling to say, maybe we can't solve it without outside influencers. Maybe we do need people looking at it in a different way,
right?
Through technology eyes, through robotic eyes, through a different lens than we have.
Let me ask you this real quick. Let's say I'm a general contractor and I understand this is the way the industry is going, and I want to begin to build my network of people who will help me with this conversation, will begin to give me perspectives that perhaps I haven't thought of. What industries or what types of people should I look for to build a network where I could begin to make progress in terms of this idea of design, manufacture, build?
Yeah, I mean, what we're tied to, who I usually like to have these discussions with are those that have really been in, kind of the manufacturing side.
Mm-hmm.
They understand manufacturing, but they don't necessarily understand construction.
Right.
But they can solve a lot of problems through that manufacturing side, but they're also tied a lot with technology. So, for me, I'm trying to tie to GC, larger general contractors as well, to kind of be their go-to expert. We want to be known as really that, and I'm sure as anyone that's kind of doing this, we want to be known as that expert that is sought after and can really help integrate anything and all things offsite.
Okay.
And start kind of teach that process, right? And I think it's not just myself; it's a lot of manufacturers that do it as well. And the manufacturers got to humble themselves too. That hey, they don't know everything, and sometimes it's not always the right answers. You learn to balance between conventional. It's a hybrid approach. What can conventionally be done? Again, optimizing the trades we do have on site,
right,
versus what can be done off site, and learning to really work together and not butting heads, not arguing over that project. It's for the betterment of the whole. It's saying like we have an opportunity to build a lot more buildings, right, and a lot quicker in the field if we work together. And to be, I mean, we're fighting over some things sometimes that, just don't make sense just to fight, when in reality, it's like, if we just, again, you kind of said it before, like we're all moving really, really, really fast. And that,
Right.
I get it. We are, and we're in a kind of a great economy right now from the construction side. We're seeing, things maybe slowing down slightly, but not a lot. And you
Yep.
just, but I look at it from a standpoint, like, what does the next 10 years look like? Now is now, but what are we going to do in the next 10 years? How's technology going to impact this? How's the fabrication side going to impact this? And how do we start to integrate these things together?
So let me ask you this.
GCs,
You mentioned just a minute ago that we're fighting over things that we don't really need to be fighting over. What are some of those things? Like if you were, 2 beers in with a GC and, a little bit relaxed, what would you be saying? Hey man, you got to stop fighting over this kind of stuff. It really is not, it's not helping you to make progress.
Yeah, I think a lot has to do with, who's doing what from a labor pool standpoint. And we have our unions, and we need them. We need our union workers. I want to make them as efficient as possible on these job sites. But getting into understanding why the manufacturers and why the fabricators are there to support the industry opposed to seeing it as a threat. Because the real challenge is our threat would be is somebody's going to solve it that's not in the general construction world. They're not in the fabrication world, and they totally flip us on our head. That could happen.
Right.
Instead of coming together and saying, like, look, I'm not here to impact. We want to help your bottom line. We don't want to take your bottom line away any more than we want to take our bottom line away. But our fear is we put ourselves fighting over kind of nitpicky little things of who's doing what. This needs to be this group over here. We don't want to do offsite because of this reason. When prices of construction are increasing at a drastic rate,
yep,
and time where schedules are slipping, we don't get bodies on the job site. Well, what are our clients going to start doing? They're going to start holding the money back, not building as much as they want to build because the prices are ballooning up.
yep,
Opposed to saying, why don't we look at this differently and start, planning? It's a lot cheaper to plan than it is to build it and then solve it in the field. It's a lot cheaper to slow the process down to get the answers, staggering construction, optimizing the laborers we have, use technology, use fabrication. It changes what we can build in the same time. We can't even build enough housing right now to even close the gap in California.
So it's interesting because you brought up another point that I hadn't thought about there. What is, in your experience, generally speaking, the attitude of the union side, particularly here in California in the Bay? The union's pretty strong in where you are in the Bay Area of Northern California. How do you negotiate that aspect? Because you're saying, hey, let's do offsite manufacturing. The unions are saying, wait a minute, what about my guys on site?
Yeah, and I think what I want the unions to understand is like this is about doing more work and better work and safer work for their crews. The crews that do what we do and install what we are, they're carpenters and we have electricians. It's the same trade pool.
But they're doing it in the factory as opposed to on the job site?
Well, they're still doing so really they're still doing everything on the job site, but everything component wise or assembly wise is sent to the job site. So it's no different than receiving carpet. It's some of the things that have to be manufactured and sent. The trades that are still doing the work is opposed to doing it on site and things that are I feel awful when I see people sanding down drywall and wearing a mask.
Right.
Carrying around drywall and the weight of it and trying to hang it. It's an unsafe thing when we can use the same labor pools and carpenters and get them into installing prefabricated assemblies and components. It's a slight shift of mindset, but
right.
In the future it's much safer. It's much more sustainable, much more from an environmental friendly, but it's union friendly in the fact that we don't, you're paying for very talented people to come into these buildings and build spaces and we don't have enough of them. And we know that. But if we could optimize them, and we could look at, from an electrical side, and to be honest, electricians are already prefabricating things in their own factories, and they're doing it by choice.
Right.
And to be honest, it doesn't impact an engineer at all. It doesn't matter. You can, you think about companies that are doing it here in the Bay Area. They're doing the mechanical,
Yep.
doing some of the plumbing.
Yep.
They'll do the racks and then all of that. It's already starting to trigger in the Bay Area, and you want to see that. I applaud them all, and I can't wait to continue to work with them because they are forward thinking, and they're saying, like, it is much safer for me to do as much as I can over here, and they're acknowledging that.
Where does Vantest play in all of this? Where do you guys sit? What sort of services or what kind of value do you provide in this whole process?
So we just began last year off of our company that owns us. We kind of spun off, created a new company, but our primary focus was in the interior build environment, really as a specialty subcontractor with a prefabrication solution. We also are, at the same time, we have projects where we are a general contractor, and it may be something where it's predominantly using the prefabrication, but there isn't another general contractor. It's a project that maybe we're already doing 75% of the work in prefabrication. We'll bring on the other sub trades. We'll hire them to complete the project for our clients. We're also beginning the endeavor of really looking at the modular volumetric world, when it comes to multifamily and hospitality. Mm-hmm. This is an area that I believe we have a duty to look at because of the shortage and the housing shortage that we have in California. It also fits right within the vision of Vantest, which is really to do anything and everything that we can with offsite construction, align ourselves with everyone that is really focused on offsite, and then really optimizing those trades that we still have. Yep. So that we can construct more and better spaces for our clients.
So it sounds like you guys aren't just one thing, but you're painting a fairly broad brush in terms of things offsite and in terms of things of design, manufacture, build.
Absolutely. And it's as a GC, you're looking for specialty subs that do, much the same, that can fill gaps. Again, it's creating hybrids and kind of filling the gaps that we don't really perform from a prefabricated standpoint.
And so you're in the Bay Area mainly?
We're up in Sacramento and also the Bay Area.
Okay.
So that's a little different. We're doing work currently as well with the prefabrication side up in Washington.
Nice.
With our manufacturer we work with, there are other companies that are very similar to what we do all across the country, which we have a very large network. And we've been doing this 15 years, but I think we've come to a realization in the last 3 or 4. Maybe we weren't explaining it quite right. Maybe we instead of saying it's an iPhone, we were telling them a different story.
Right.
And we're not here to necessarily threaten anyone. We're here to help optimize every person that's on the job, from the design firms and the contractors, and get the field to be lean. And for us, it's my passion is everything offsite. Started in the mid 90s. I've had a passion for it. I study really what's going on in the technology world and how that's impacting CNC machines through robotics, artificial intelligence, and giving us data where we could never get data before.
So you
utilizing that to.
Are you looking at the moment to build up your sub base?
We are. We continue to expand. We've only been doing this year, but we're continuing to align with subcontractors, several here in South, what we call South Bay and Silicon Valley, that are really intriguing, that have been doing and really taking on prefabrication from the system side, mechanical, electrical, really fun. We've been aligning with other volumetric from the modular side, having conversations with a lot of them, understanding their process. It's best to understand how they do business, their process, to start looking at how that integrates into your role and the pre-construction and the planning, working with developers, other specialty consultants that really work with the other manufacturers. And it's pretty exciting to just, be in a room with those thought leaders and kind of hear what's going on and how it's changing. And the message is always the same. It's we're here to help. Maybe we all didn't explain it right, the first time, and we sort of are humble enough to say, like, walk in a room and apologize for maybe it's 30 years, 40 years of bad messaging, and saying, like, hey, we want to see what we can break loose together with all of you in order to build, better spaces for all of the end users, and regardless of vertical market, whether it's healthcare, corporate, education.
So if I'm a GC or a sub listening to this, what actions would you recommend that I take in terms of, if I haven't dipped my foot in the water yet, really getting comfortable in this new environment, this new way of approaching in terms of design, manufacture, build? What advice do you have there, Ryan?
I think I always tell people it's going to be different,
right?
But it's not going to be any worse than what you have now, right? It's really there to make it better. And it's not going to go the way we all think the first time, because it's one of those areas where shift one person out of a project and it changes the dynamic of the project. Add another one in, it changes the dynamic again.
Right.
So for us, it's one of those, colloquial, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
For prefabrication and off-site, the story's always, well, we tried that one.
Yeah.
Okay, did you try it again? I mean, because I remember the first time I ate spinach and I didn't want it again.
Right.
Same thing with kale, but yet now I do it. It's like there's always a first time, and you just have to look at it and say, like, was that what I expected, or could I improve upon it? Because I'm telling you, the first time we probably, back in 1915, when the framers tried to hang drywall versus plaster, it was probably not a pretty experience.
Right.
And we know that took 30 years to change.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a massive reason for the industry to even adopt it, which was, World War II and the explosion in the housing market. So we were kind of forced into it.
Right.
I think for us, it's look, we're all learning together. But at the same time, I think what we have to understand is who are the experts in the room to help guide the process.
Right.
And if we don't slow down to listen to those experts when they're saying they need something, because it is different. I mean, when you're painting something in a TI, it's in an improvement project in the field, you don't need it until right before you're ready to do the sample, which is sometime, several months into the project. But when you're doing things with offsite construction, for some, they need painting day 7 of the project. And for me on the prefabrication side, I need it minus 30 days before, because I'm going to be fabricating and I have to put it into the software. It's a change. It's a philosophy change. It makes people think differently about it.
So what you're saying then is that if I'm a GC or a sub getting into it, number one is to have the mindset that it will be different. And what I'm hearing from you as well is that if you've tried it before and it hasn't worked, don't let that stop you from trying it again.
Yeah. I mean, you can't, it's repetitive. We're creatures of habit, right? I mean, if somebody went to the gym for the first time in their life, they would hate it and they'd probably never want to go back again. But you go for 90 days and create a habit and make it a lifestyle.
Yep.
And then you get better at something, right? I mean, the first time you play the piano, it's not going to sound like, you're Beethoven sitting there creating a.
So that's really a cool analogy, or a cool way of thinking about it, is as a learning experience. And again, the only pushback that I'm finding in my own mind is, but piano lessons are cheap. Construction projects are expensive.
Yeah, I think in just taking it in that philosophy, but I think, to be honest, it's far more expensive for us to not change in an industry. I think if we're reluctant to make the change, when we're all saying that something's got to give, something's got to change. Yeah. There's not one single conversation. I think there's an article, and maybe it was Forbes today, on the construction industry being broken.
Yes.
That doesn't make me feel very good because I'm in the industry.
Yes.
And I know the guilt trip that I feel and the fact that, like, why isn't we haven't gotten there? And the reality is that we haven't allowed it to happen. We have not embraced these outsiders to kind of help us through these challenges.
Okay.
We look at them like, architects want to solve their own problems. Contractors want to
Yep.
solve their own. And we do see the groups, we come together and we try new things and we have new technology of doing a few things here and there. And that it's amazing to see how Revit's kind of going. But the problem is architects don't build anything. And I can't stress that enough. We take the design and the concept, we put it into Revit, and then we print it out into a set of documents that gets passed along to all the trades.
So that's interesting because it's just this idea of what I'm hearing there is because a lot of contractors, they struggle with the silos that they have in their own businesses, between the field and the office and, between the different disciplines within the field perhaps. And maybe some of those techniques that they've used to overcome the silos within their own companies, they need to use to overcome the silos within the industry between the subs and the GCs and the manufacturers and the architects and the designers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have to break down the barriers that we've put up around ourselves and just, again, be willing to be heard, but also to listen to everyone else and say, we keep talking about the challenges, but maybe we need to bring in another group that looks at it from another perspective. And when it comes to manufacturing, again, it's really we're trying to take away this lost in translation of what it is we're trying to construct. But
right.
Secondly, we're also trying to add benefit back to the field that creates a safer, cleaner environment for those that are still remaining into the field and optimizing themselves that are doing the conventional work, plus doing what work can be done once the prefabrication and other offsite solutions come on board.
So let me ask you this. How can people get in touch with you if they want to? How can they reach out to you to maybe engage you in some of these conversations?
We have a website, under Vantest.net, but also my email address can pass that along.
Sure.
And that, we're happy to have the dialogue of kind of how we've gotten here. We're a team of 32. It's not just me. It takes on this kind of philosophy of making change, really adapting that change. So we're all over, we have groups all over kind of the Bay Area. I talk to people all over the country at this point. I'd love to hear kind of all perspectives. It's an area of sort of a dialogue. This concept of like embracing
right.
outside influencers is a concept that I want to talk to. I just kind of want to understand that if we all feel that way, or if we stop for a moment and just say, like, with the last person that came into my office to try to tell me about something new, how did I react to them?
Right.
The last person that kind of came in and maybe had an idea that I thought was cool, but I never really followed up with it.
Right.
All of those things, like, we're moving at a rapid pace. And for me, I love having that dialogue with people because I know I did the same thing as an architect. I was like, I'm moving way too fast. I don't have time for any of this. And it's a shame.
So, so they can reach you on the website, Vantest.net. I'll put the link in the show notes. And you're also on LinkedIn, I know.
I'm on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me there through Messenger. My email address is also RWARE at Vantis, as in Victor, ANTIS.net.
Excellent. So Ryan, I'd like to ask my guests as we're wrapping up here. You're down in the South Bay right now. If I'm coming down to San Jose, I need a bite to eat. What's your favorite restaurant to grab a bite to eat there?
One of my favorites is actually, it's in downtown San Jose. It's called Farmers Union.
Farmers Union.
Farmers Union.
Nice.
It is downtown near San Pablo. It is a phenomenal place to eat. If you like brisket, it's my favorite.
Brisket? Oh, you said the magic word.
There's brisket, fried chicken. Yeah. just a little great spot downtown, and it's right near St. Pablo Square, which is actually a phenomenal area to walk around as well.
Sweet. I'll put the link in the show notes. Ryan, I really appreciate you joining
right.
me on the show here today.
Appreciate it as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership.